People a lot. You hear 70 AD mentioned a lot. 70 AD, that means it's 70 years after, presumably Christ was born. 70 AD was when Rome destroyed Jerusalem. And it gone. The temple was gone, just sacked, burnt, everybody fled. That was it. After 70 AD, there really was no more Israel. It was gone. And there really weren't any more Jews because they just ran. They're all over the place. They went everywhere because if they hadn't, they were going to get killed. This is a major time in the history of the world when sometimes called a dispersia, but it's when the Jews ran for their lives and Israel was destroyed, Jerusalem was destroyed, the temple was gone, gone. Everybody got that? Gone. Gone. Now, if that happens, there's a problem. Because from 70 AD till 1948, there was no Israel. That's a long time to have no Israel. Why is that a long time? Because God made a covenant with Abraham that he was giving him the land. Like for 1800, however long that is, 1880 years, 70 years, thank you. 78 years, yeah, I used to be good at math. 1878 years, there was no Israel. Now what this does for you is that it will play tricks on you if you're trying to read the Bible because you don't see what you're reading. And you just don't. How could somebody in 300 AD read through the promises to Israel and think they were true? There's no Israel. What about 400? There's no Israel. 500, no Israel. 1200, no Israel. Are there any Jews? Yeah, they're around. We don't like them. It was the view of the church. We don't like the Jews. They've caused all kinds of problems. They did awful things. And the Christians did to the Jews. But there's no Israel, and over the years, the caricature of the Jewish person had gotten huge and had gotten awful, and so there was a real hatred toward Jews, and there was a total disbelief that Israel was ever going to exist again. And if Israel was going to exist, it was going to be Christian, right? That's what the Crusades were all about. If Jerusalem's ever coming back to anybody, it's Christians. And Muslims says, no, we think it should be Muslim. And the poor Jews were just like getting beat on. And so that's where all that came about. But it all started with this very bad theology that the church replaced Israel. Now, and I didn't really even grow up paying any attention to this, but I'm certain, I know this, that just like Robert Morris said, Israel was the church. The church was Israel. We just took over. Anything that was promised Israel, we got. Right? Can somebody talk to me about that? How did you grow up thinking about Israel? Somebody who's been around a while, who's been a real Bible student. Yeah, Lois.
Well, several years ago, a lot of years ago, 40 years ago, I thought that the Jews were a pain in the neck, and what were they doing, and who did they think they were?
Right.
It was probably during the 73 wars and things, and I had a supernatural intervention. God spoke to me, and I had such commitment how bad I was for the way I was thinking, but that's what I thought. There was no value.
Right. What you were the product of almost 2,000 years of bad teaching. That's really what you are. We come by it naturally. And then anti-Semitism, if there is such thing as a natural prejudiceness, that's what we come by. The world does. And I don't know where my notes are, but somewhere I had down why we're all anti-Semitic. It was awesome, this thing I read. I won't find it, so it doesn't matter. Somebody else on how your view of Israel, even as a young person, as a young Christian, what has been your view of Israel? Yeah.
Well, my dad always said, well, you Jewed me down.
Right. So it digs because it was, let me just, I wish I had that list. I had it ready and then something distracted me. But the reason that everybody hates the Jews is because the devil hates the Jews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really doesn't. I mean, he hates everybody because he's just a loser. But he strategically hates the Jews. He has to. He knows that every promise is coming through them. He knows everything bad that's going to happen to him is coming through them. Therefore, he strategically hates them. And so therefore, it doesn't make any sense that the world picked one dinky little nomadic tribe and hates them. I mean, why not hate the Uyghur people? Huh? Darn Uyghur people. You Uyghured me down. Right? You don't care about the Uyghur people. Why? Because really the devil doesn't care about the Uyghur people. I mean, the Jews are such a small and in population and really in power, very insignificant people group in the world. There's like 5,000 people groups in the world. They're one of them. They're not even a dominant one. But there's like, if there's one commonality of somebody who hates everybody, if there's one common people that we all hate, it's the Jews. And I'm telling you, it is so demonic. It absolutely is. There's no reason for it. There's no reason. None. And yet it's there, it's strong, and it's international anti-Semitism. Yeah.
You asked, what your feelings were. Well, we're the old bunch. There was a big population of Jewish people in the war when we were kids. I didn't think about Israel, but like Dad and I always thought, God, those Jews, they get all our Christian holidays off, yet they get their Jewish holidays off.
They double dipped in the holidays.
But if we didn't have the Jews here, you wouldn't have had horns.
Well, yeah.
You would not have had horns.
And for some of you who don't know about that, they've had somebody jumped in on that when they said that. I mean, they were very influential in most of the good things that happened. They had a lot of money, that's for sure.
They sure did.
Yeah, Barbie.
I worked, as a teenager, I worked for Abe Schwartz, and he was a Jewish man, and I just thought he was wonderful, you know. But I was raised in a family that wasn't prejudiced against anybody, I don't think. But my mom and dad went to Israel in the 80s, and my mom came home bad-mouthing Jews. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing from her, because I didn't feel that way. And, you know, I had pursued maybe my own education and had felt like they deserved to have Israel back, you know. But she had gone on a tour where part of the tour was given by Palestinians. And so she was getting that point of view, and she was really negative on Jewish people, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Yeah, and I just want you to see this, and I like pointing to good people who have a prejudice against Jews for no reason, because it's demonic people. I just want you to see it's demonic. It's unfounded. There's no reason for it. Anybody who, nobody has been hurt by the Jews, but there's a common hatred of them, just saying it is such the work of the devil. And it's an international, working of the enemy. Yeah.
Jesus said, if they hate me, they are going to hate you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and honestly, here's the problem we have. If you read Jesus' teachings, who was Jesus always talking to? Jews. He didn't talk to one Christian.
No.
He didn't, and he certainly didn't talk to a Gentile Christian, which is us, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously, I'm not saying Jesus wasn't speaking to us. But when you understand his audience, it at least makes us think, wow, maybe he loved the Jews. Maybe he was a Jew.
Yeah.
Maybe his mom was a Jew.
Yeah.
And his brothers. And everybody he ever had contact with. And all the people that he died for, that he ever saw, literally saw. He obviously did stuff with Gentiles, but obviously the vast majority of what he did was with the Jewish people.
Satan hates the Jews because they are God's chosen people. They were God's chosen people, they are God's chosen people, and they will continue to be God's chosen people, irregardless of what they do or don't do.
Right.
They are that he has made the covenant, and he's going to keep the covenant irregardless of what the Jews do or don't do. And that's all of history.
And then this is what I want you to see is when you even hear Christians, can I really didn't get into totally what replacement theology was, because replacement theology is very prevalent. In fact, just this afternoon, I was with one of my good friends, and I was telling him where I was going. He's a Christian, and I said I'm teaching this class on Israel, and I said I'm really excited about it. And it's a good thing for a church to jump hold of, and he said, well, what are you going to teach on? I said, well, we're going to get into the covenant. We're going to talk about replacement theology and yada yada yada. And he wasn't, because a lot of people don't know the term replacement theology. And I said, replacement theology, I said, is when Christians believe that the church completely replaced Israel in all the promises of God and all that stuff. He says, yeah, that's probably where I would land, because I was talking to him. I said, many denominations. It's a Catholic teaching, always has been. Now, when I say these denominations, know that most people won't ever use the term replacement theology or supersessionism. I'm probably the only person in this region who has said that word today. And I've said it many times. It is a strong, this doctrine was strong in the Reformation, so like Lutherans, this is part of who they are, they believe this. The covenant theology is a type of replacement theology. Methodist is a type of replacement theology. Again, it's all modified and individuals can do individual things. I'm just saying as a whole, typically they have been that, as well as Presbyterian and others. It's all sly. It's all just underneath. It's not a we hate Jews. That has been, but that's not what's out there. It's just a subtle, well, yeah, but they're the ones who killed Jesus and we took their place. It's just subtle. It's there. It's in the midst. And therefore it's well, Lois, you said it there, you realized, my gosh, what's wrong with me?
Oh, it was probably the deepest criticism, hammering that I'd ever received from the Lord. I mean, it was a conviction, and there's no words to it. And I was totally changed. So what you're saying, I never thought of it, was I received a deliverance.
Right, because it's when we say it's demonic thinking, everybody gets spooky, but it's the devil getting us to hate the seed of Abraham.
Yeah.
That's really what
Yeah.
it's after, and that's, I mean, we can say that without any controversy. The controversy is then what do we do with the land and stuff like that. So it's there, it's subtle, and some of you are there, and it's subtle in there. It's okay, but here's what I really challenge every one of us to do. First of all, understand what God promised to Abraham, and then begin to see what a covenant is. And then the cool thing is, see how the church fits into this, because it's amazing. Mm-hmm. Do you know that I know Jesus today because God, I don't know why he did this. If I had been God and the Jews were my people, I would have had them all get saved. We would have been out of here. See you, world. Done.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that. Really, at the expense of his people, he brought me in. At the expense, because and let's get into that, because I want us to see how the church fits in. Romans chapter 11. Let's go here. This is tons of stuff to study, but I just want you to see the strange. Oh, there it is. Good. I knew I took notes today when I was doing this, and it was off there. Romans chapter 11, and really 9, 10, and 11, I encourage you to read them, reread them, read them again, and really read them with asking the Lord to show you some things about them, because they're confusing chapters, but they're pretty amazing chapters. Paul, of course, was Jewish. Like, this is newsflash to some Christians, that these guys who wrote the Bibles were Jews. And Paul was like majorly Jewish. Like Paul literally says, I would trade my salvation if my Jewish brothers and sisters would come to know the Lord. That's pretty strong. This is somebody who was not anti-Semitic. Nobody in the New Testament was anti-Semitic.
No.
Nobody was. Even as Paul or Peter, sometimes they even shook the dust off their feet because they were mad at the Jews. that was mad at them with a heart for them. You can be mad at people because they're knuckleheads and they're not doing what they should do. It's okay. But you don't, you're mad at them with a heart that's broken for them. Because that's really how Paul was upset at his really Jewish things. So let's read some things out of chapter 11. He says, I ask then, again, you should read 10 because then doesn't make any sense unless you read before it. He says, did God reject his people? That's a good question. And rather than just leave us wondering what the answer is, Paul says, by no means. So Paul's pretty clear that God didn't reject his people. He says, by no means. He says, and then he goes on to say, I'm an Israelite myself. I'm from Abraham, the tribe of Benjamin, and yada, yada, yada. And so go on to all that stuff. You should read it all. It's really good. But first, I just want you to see that Paul clearly says that God did not reject the Israelites. But watch what he says instead. In verse 11, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? Not at all. So I want you to see this. We could easily say the Jews have been stumbling, right? That's safe to say. Obviously, Jewish people have become Christians. They follow Jesus. They've met Messiah. Really, even saying they become Christians is really a goofy word to say. They have met their Savior. They've met their Messiah. Because you don't need to become a Christian to get saved. There's a loaded quote. Go ahead, somebody say that.
Yeah.
You need to meet the Messiah to get saved. Why do I differentiate that? Because the word Christian itself is loaded. It is packed. I tell you what, talk to some Jewish people who had a grandmother killed in the Holocaust, and you say, would you like to become a Christian? What do they think? Hitler. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
No, I'm not going to become a Christian. However, they're going to meet their Messiah. Messiah is awesome. Messiah is their Messiah. Same Jesus, but that's why I differentiate between the words. So, where was I? Not at all. Rather, because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's strong there.
Yeah.
Because look at this. This is, and there's other place where it talks about their eyes being blinded for this type of thing. But they've, because it uses the word here, because of this, salvation has come to the Gentiles if the Jews, whether you want to use the word eyes blinded, rejected, whatever word you want to use, their transgressions, because that's what it uses here, if all the Jews had instantly accepted Jesus as their Messiah,
We wouldn't be here.
no Gentile would be in heaven. Like 3, right? The guy who, the few guys in the Old Testament. That's it. The Gentiles wouldn't have come in at all. But God, remember, when he chose Abraham, and this, I didn't get on this today, but I think you know this. God chose Abraham to bless him to reach the nations of the world. And that really it had happened in a little way for the 2,000 years from Abraham to Jesus. The world was blessed, but never to the full extent that God wanted it to. Post Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, the nations were getting blessed mightily by the God of Abraham. They were coming to know him in droves. In order for the way that happened was that the Jews were blinded. The Jews weren't coming in droves. But watch what it says. It says the salvation came to the Gentiles. Why? To make Israel envious or jealous. Because what is Israel going to do when if you want to use the word, because the Bible uses it, when the fullness of Gentiles comes, Israel's going to say, wait a minute. That's my Messiah. What? Take my Messiah and come back in droves. And in fact, if you want to look at really the greatest tool, and I'm quoting scripture here, so don't think this is a terrible thing to say. The greatest tool for Jewish evangelization is Jealousy.
Yeah.
Jealousy.
Yeah.
Painting a picture of such an amazing Messiah that is theirs.
Yeah.
But I got him. Huh? Little kid who stole your toy. And he's playing with it. And he's having so much fun. And I'm in misery.
You might get.
And then one day I realize that's my toy. Huh? And then I'm wanting it. I'm getting jealous. I'm starting to get passionate for it. And the guy who's got the toy knows that it was only his because this kid ignored it. So when the kid wants the toy back, this guy better go with open arms. Because he knows the toy has an unlimited number of wheels or whatever. And so he comes back, but it's jealousy. Now watch what's happened, and we're not going to go into it today. We'll touch on it over the weeks. But church history has not been reading this verse. We haven't provoked Jews to jealousy. We've hated Jews. I hate to even say we, but I have to lump myself in this because I'm part of Christendom. We've hated Jews. We've persecuted Jews. We've killed Jews. And we didn't want them to get the gospel. And what Jew is going to be jealous of that? Oh, I'm so jealous of them. They're idiots. Right? I mean, there's no jealousy. So unfortunately, we haven't followed this. And this is the view. I have my salvation because God has blinded the eyes of His children. I am forever grateful to the Lord.
Amen.
And I'm forever desiring that they get the salvation.
Yeah.
That's the correct view of how this works. I got it because they didn't take it, but they're going to get it, so I'm willing to share. Which is very different from, you killed Christ, you rotten people, burn in hell.
Yeah.
And you say, well, that's a little harsh. No, I'm telling you, that's what history has painted of and it's been weird political things, and I know that. But let's continue on in 11, because you see how this goes on. Because I want you to see how we came in. Their fullness bring. I'm talking to you, verse 13. I'm talking to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles. I make much of my ministry in hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them. And so he goes on. It's really cool stuff. I want to get down to where we're grafted in. Verse 17. If some of the branches have been broken off, and the branches he's referring to are Jerusalem, our Israelites, our Hebrews, our children, natural children of Abraham, the branches that he's talking about. If some have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, that's what Gentiles are. Okay, in this imagery, in this whatever it is, picture, I can't even think of the word. The descendant of Abraham is the natural branch. And the Gentiles, the wild olive branch.
Because we're wild.
We're wild. Wild and crazy. And if you would go back to the time of the first century and you looked at the Jewish people and then looked at all the rest of the world, you would say, no way could God save them. Because they're a bunch of barbarians. And so they are wild indeed. And so he says, though a wild olive branch, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root. Do not boast over those branches. If you do, consider this. And this is like the sobering thing. You do not support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief. And you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, He will not spare you either. This is what Paul's saying to the Roman Gentile Christians. Don't you get cocky.
Yeah.
He says the only reason, and I can just sense in the writing here a little bit of the Pharisee Paul rising up. Don't you pick on my Jew friends. I'm one of them. The only reason you're here is because they're not.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can read a lot into this, but I can really sense the mood of Paul saying, really sternly, don't you boast about your salvation at the expense of the Israelites. And I think it's really strong. I think it's a very strong thing. And then it's really strong because it's actually downright scary. I definitely lean more toward eternal security than I would to tomorrow you might not be saved. But let me just tell you, verse 21 scares me. Does it not you? It just does. It just scares me. And it scares me because this is all in the context of gloating over Israel because we have their Messiah and they haven't seen him yet. And so it's to me, it's a very alarming thing. And my heart goes out for the church over the centuries and to this day, to some extent, the church is much different now. A lot of what happened is 1948, whenever that was it May 4th, 1948? Is that when you were born? You in Israel, right there, huh?
48.
But you weren't born on May 4th, were you?
No.
No, so she was, so she wins.
Oh.
So, because that's when Israel was born.
No, mine's October 1st.
Yeah, you were like, Israel was like 3 months old. They've already fought 3 wars by then.
Still at 48.
But 1948, when Israel became a nation again, it literally shook theology. It shook a lot of theology because, first of all, it's a miracle. In 2 weeks, we're going to talk about how Israel came to be. The 6-Day War, if you've never studied that, 1968. 68 or 67? 67, thank you. 67. When my brother was born. So when somebody in my family is born, something big happens in Israel. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, we're lined up with
Yeah,
Israel.
we're just following the course of history. But the 6-Day War is one of the most amazing wars in the history of the world. If the Bible hadn't been written, that would have been one of the battles in the Bible. It really is better than Jehoshaphat Bible. It's It's better than the Gideon battle. It's remarkable. I'll actually show you some pretty neat clips on it. It's the most miraculous war, I think, ever. Like 14 countries decided to attack Israel, and in 6 days, Israel beat the snot out of all of them. I mean, they literally, it was going to be so bad that all of the parks within Jerusalem, all the city parks, were declared to be graveyards. They were going to be graveyards. They were literally digging graves. Jewish people were digging graves because they knew the end was coming. Like, whatever it was, 12 or 14 nations were going to come and kill them. Mm-hmm. They're digging their own graves, waiting for the end to come. And 6 days later, Israel doubled in size. 6 days, they destroyed everybody. And on the 7th day, they rested. And even the most hardened anti-Jew has to see the irony in that. So it's a bizarre war. We will definitely look into it, but I encourage you to read up on some things on it because it's phenomenal. So, anyways, coming back to where they come in Romans 11 is the grafting in that we're grafted in. We are in Ephesians 1. We're mentioned as adopted in. Now, let me just say this about adoption because adoption's a cool thing, and Gentiles are adopted. We just are. Everybody, of course, has to be born into the kingdom of God, but we're referred to as adopted into the kingdom of God because of the seed of Abraham. I was talking to, of course, we have 2 adopted children, but we don't have any previous adopted children. We don't have any previous regular, I don't know what they call those. I only have adopted kids. What do you call them? What do you call your kids? Mine are adopted. I thought that's how everybody came. Jason still says, "Oh, when did he come?" Or what do they say? When are they going to go get their baby? They say when somebody's having a kid. So they think everybody is born in Guatemala and everybody goes and gets them. It just works out well. Most moms would prefer to take a plane trip, I'm sure. Where was I going with this? Oh, the adopted children are really cool. Now, I have adopted kids. You guys have adopted kids. and you have natural kids too. You have natural and adopted. So I can pick on the Adelgrams a little bit here. You had 3 natural, 3 adopted. When you adopted the second 3, did you get rid of the first 3? What? I thought you only had room for 3 in here. You literally added on, right? It's actually a pretty cool picture because some people would think, they really have in their mind that, oh, God brought in the Gentiles. He had to make room for the Gentiles, so he got rid of the Jews. Well, that's absurd. It just is absurd to think this, that he got rid of them and had to somehow make room for Gentiles because there's a lot of Gentiles coming and Jerusalem's only so big, that whole thing. And so the adopted ones come in. Now, I want you to see this because it's really important because it goes 2 ways, the hatred. An adopted child is a full child. A natural-born child is a full child. So there's no second-class kids. There's no, well, you're adopted. I don't know where that came from because I watch things differently. I think of adoption differently than people who haven't adopted. Obviously, I know that. But when did adoption become like a slam? I watch some of the old shows and people say, well, you were adopted. Oh, you must have been adopted. I'm like, why is that a negative term? I must have missed that growing up. Yeah.
I would say that it's, again, the enemy just coming against mankind in any way and every way. It's like he sits on your shoulder and whispers negatives. And then you turn around and you say that about other people because even young children start attacking young children.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a constant war battle. Again, I think of it in reference to the enemy.
That's actually kind of a cool thing because because adoption is another one of those very spiritual things. It's very important. It's like majorly important because if God's not into adopting kids, hey, we're in trouble. And so I like that. I've never really connected the dots.
Constantly tear you down. And that's one area that he's going to use.
Exactly.
When you're adopted, and somebody else that's not adopted is going to be an insecurity or whatever. The list
Right.
goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
The chatter of the enemy is constant.
That's like a boom, a light bulb went off in my head today. We've always celebrated. Adoption's way better. Let me just tell you, if you're adopted, you get a birthday and a gotcha day. It rocks when you're adopted. You get 2 birthdays. And let me tell you what, as much as you think you did, I chose my kids. Huh? Yeah. Actually, one of them, we literally looked at a picture and said, no. Yeah, him. Huh? That's cool. So that really gets you a neat picture of, that Zachary just came, but Jason, we actually literally chose him. Said, that's the one.
But Zachary came with instructions.
Yeah, he came with instructions. But so this, and of course you guys literally adopted because yours were a little older. You literally chose your kids. But I like what you said, Roxanne. It's a continual battle for truth is what the enemy's after. And what it is, when the 2 branches, this is what I want you to see. First of all, maybe I should have said this before, salvation only comes through Jesus, okay? Only through Jesus. There's nobody gets, naturally born into salvation. You don't. You only come through Jesus. So watch this though. When the branch grafted in begins to love the natural branch,